Is Steve going to be late? I guess maybe slightly, maybe by like a minute or 30 seconds or something by the time y'all see this. Not super late, I hope. Radical Bacon and everybody else. Hi. Welcome to the show. Glad you could all make it. So, as usual, I will be responding to questions submitted ahead of time by my Patreon patrons and my channel members. Um, so if you're with us here live and you're in the chat, hi everybody in the chat, and you have something that you want me to see, whether it's a question or something you want to tell me or something you want to talk about or a super chat that you wanted to throw up there, please, if possible, hold on to it until I get through the patron and member questions, because I will not be paying close attention to the live chat while I'm answering the patron and member questions. And then once I get through all of the patron and member questions, I will spend the rest of the show hanging out with folks in the live. Yes, Geek, I forgot about the pinned message. Oops. Usually I put everything I just said to you, I put in a pinned message and I put up there, but I forgot. You know what? I'm going to write the pinned message right now. Thank you, Geek. I'm just going to take a minute. Hey, folks. Remember, I'm not looking at the chat while I answer pre-submitted questions, so please hold anything for me in the live chat until later. Thanks. There we go. And now I pin it. Boom. Look at that. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you for the reminder. Dana, I wouldn't say I'm often late, but yeah. Hey, hi, Kara. Hi, Duan. Hi, John. Hi, everybody in the chat. Glad you can make it. Hi, David. By the way, David, thank you for getting the song Rio to play over and over again in my head ever since I saw your chat message from earlier on. I appreciate that. I always appreciate that. All right. Now to the patron and member questions. We'll go through these first, as always, and then it's live chat. Actually, no, then it's Stuffy and Friends short premiere time, and then I'll spend the rest of the time in the live chat. So anyway, here we go. Patron questions, patron and member questions. The first one comes to us from Matt L, who says, so I recently watched a retrospective about Voyager besides yours on Caretaker, and they mentioned they felt Voyager missed the plot. Chakotay and the Maquis integrate immediately, and the fact that they are literal IRA or other equivalents is immediately forgotten by the show, except for worst case scenario holodeck show in season 6 or 7. If it would have been more about clashing ideals or trying to actually work together or learning from each other, besides having a random old Maquis trick as the plot demanded, it would have been a better show. Thoughts? Well, yeah, I agree completely. I think one of the big mistakes that the show makes is, and one of the big things that it sets up in the pilot that you would hope would become an ongoing part of the show and then completely drops, is that Maquis angle. Why even make a bunch of members of the show former Maquis people? Like, why even do that? Because the series never did anything with it. You know, it was kind of an issue in the first episode. And then by the end of the first episode, Chakotay is the first officer, and all of his Maquis people have integrated into the Starfleet crew. They're even all wearing the uniforms. Everybody looks exactly the same. And there's very little in the way of Maquis Starfleet conflict throughout the show. They touch on it here and there in very, very fleeting minor ways. It is not at all like an ongoing source of tension or conflict on the show. And that's a big missed opportunity, if you ask me. Even just the fact that they immediately put on the uniforms bothers me. Like, it's an aesthetic detail. It doesn't necessarily mean anything deeper for the show, but it would have been at least something to set Voyager a little bit apart if Chakotay and his people had not immediately put on Starfleet uniforms. If just that little visual cue that not everybody here is part of the same thing, that they've been thrown together by circumstance and they're working together. but they're not all exactly on the same team. There are some pretty serious ideological divides among this crew. Like even something like that would have been an improvement. So yes, I absolutely agree that the division and the conflict between the Starfleet crew and the Maquis crew should have been played up and used for story a lot more than it was. A lot more than it was. And if they weren't going to do that, just leave that part out. Just don't do that part of the show because it's clear that they really had no intention of actually exploring that. Kyle, which Star Trek doctor do you think has the best bedside manner? Do you enjoy any Star Trek doctor's character arcs more than the others? I think the best bedside manner's got to be Beverly, wouldn't you think? I mean, other than Voyager's doctor at first, who is a little gruff and a little impatient with people, I don't think of any of the doctors as having a bad bedside manner. Like McCoy had his sort of irascible side, but he rarely behaved that way toward patients. Like he saved that for Spock and Kirk. Um, Dr. Pulaski, same thing. You know, she had kind of a gruffness about her, but when she was with patients, she always seemed, like you would hope a doctor would be. So I don't think any of them had a bad bedside manner, again, except for the Hollow Doc at first, but he, I think, developed, a pretty good one by a certain point. So I don't think any of the doctors really have bad ones, but I think Beverly was the best. And which doctor's character arcs? I mean, Jesus, there's only like two of them that even had character arcs, aren't there? there's really, there's Bashir and there's the doctor from Voyager. Are there any other doctors that have had like character arcs? Um, maybe maybe Culber in Discovery a little bit. Um, he's had a bit of a character arc, and I'm trying to think. Mbenga in Strange New Worlds, a little bit with his daughter, a little bit of I mean that was a story. I don't know if how much of a character arc for him it was, but it was at least a story that he had. I guess you could say there was a little bit of an arc in him sort of uh, being willing to let his daughter go in that episode. Um, but no, I think the biggest character arcs would be Bashir and uh, the Doctor on Voyager. And I think that the Doctor on Voyagers stands out because he's one of the only characters on that entire show that had any character arc to speak of at all. Like the only character on Voyager that got any real, like meaningful, noticeable development over the course of the whole show. Really, it was the Doctor, and that was about it. So his was good, and Bashir too. Actually, I think probably Bashir's character arc is the best one and is the one I enjoy the most because he is so different. If you watch, I don't know, Dana and I have been watching Deep Space Nine every other Wednesday for Trek Reluctantly, and I think we just started season 4, and I think even at this point, you can see that Bashir is a much different character than he was in the first season, that he has been brought along, quite significantly. And which is a good thing because he was a little bit of a twerp at the beginning, and he has grown into a much more interesting and much more likable character. So I guess I would probably say, and then of course he has a bit further to go as well as we get through the back half of the series. So he's not done evolving yet, from the perspective of season 4. So I guess Bashir is my favorite Doctor character arc. Oasis, I'm thinking about your Monday video. Have you ever tried to make any fast food items at home? I once made my own KFC famous bowls from a Joshua Weissman recipe, and they came out really nice. Also, I made some banger Butterfingers too on one occasion. If you haven't, would you be interested in doing so? I don't think I ever have. No, no, I don't think I've ever tried to recreate a fast food thing. I mean, I've cooked things at home that you can also get at fast food restaurants. Like obviously I've made burgers, more times than I can count, and I've done like chicken and chicken sandwiches and fried chicken and stuff like that. But I've never said to myself, I'm going to try and recreate KFC fried chicken, or I'm going to try and recreate a Big Mac as accurately as I can. Like I've never tried to do that. I don't really see the point to that. Because if I want like a burger from Wendy's or a chicken sandwich from Wendy's, I'll just go get one. if I'm making it at home, I want to make it the way I like to make it. Not exactly how it is at a restaurant. I'll just go to the restaurant and get it. So I've never really, no, I've never really tried it. Um, and yeah, and I guess I get the feeling it would be difficult to recreate, like, you know, precisely just because of the way fast food is manufactured and cooked and assembled. It's kind of an assembly line process. And, like I just don't think I could recreate that texture and that feeling and that flavor, which may be a good thing or maybe a bad thing, depending on how how attached you are to, the specific flavor of a Big Mac or a Big Bacon Classic or whatever you're trying to do. But no, I've never tried. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that your Butterfingers turned out good. That sounds delicious. But no, I've never tried it myself. Kelly O'Hara, how would you feel about the government in service of the people repossessing church property, starting with megachurches and transforming them into community gardens? Not that it would ever happen, of course. I mean, I wouldn't be okay with them doing that. Like, no, I think churches should be allowed to exist. Like, I don't think the government should repossess church property just for the sake of it. I mean, as distasteful as I find them, I don't think there should be anything illegal or that mega churches should be prevented from existing. I do think they should be monitored a lot more closely. And I mean, obviously, if they're found to have been guilty of some kind of fraud or some other kind of crime, and they end up owing people as the result of a lawsuit or as a result of having to, sort of make reparation for whatever their crimes are, and the government has to seize their property because of that, well, yeah, absolutely. They shouldn't be treated any differently than any other organization. But I don't think the government should just seize church property because it's church property, I mean, yeah, seizing it and the prospect of a mega church property, being turned into a public park, a community garden, something like that. Yes, of course, I think that's a much better use of land to make it a public space that everybody can use and enjoy, as opposed to it being a mega church. But I don't think the government, with no other reason, should be seizing church property. I think church property should be taxed, like unless the church is legitimately operating as a charity and can claim tax breaks that would be offered to any other charity, whether they were religious in nature or not. If it's just, I don't think there should be a special tax exemption for churches. I would get rid of that tomorrow if I could. But in terms of the government just taking church property for the hell of it, and with no other reason, I'm not in favor of that. No. Heather Long, hey Steve, love your work. I'm concerned about Picard season 3. Really? I actually enjoyed the first season, but the second was all over the place. With season 3 coming, what do we think are the biggest challenges the show faces, and are you looking forward to it? I'm looking forward to it in kind of a perverse way. Like I'm looking forward to a train wreck. Well, first of all, the way we're going to watch it and review it this year is Jason Harding, my best friend and co-host on our Ensign's Log podcast and Late Seating podcast. Jason and I are going to be watching season 3 of Picard together, and then we are going to be reviewing the episodes together. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be fun to watch it with Jason and then to talk about it with Jason for all of you. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the show itself in the sense that I don't have any realistic hope that it will be a good show. Now, maybe it'll surprise me. That would be great. If it did turn out to be actually a legitimately great show, like that would be fantastic. But I see no indication of that. So I'm hoping for a train wreck. I'm hoping for just the most outrageously over the top, just unbelievably awful, can you believe this shit show, possible. That's what I'm hoping for. It'll just be completely off the rails. That's what I'm looking forward to, if that is what it is. What are the biggest challenges? Assuming that the goal is to make actually a good show, the challenge after the first two seasons, and especially, as you say, the second season, because there were parts about the first season that I really enjoyed too, right? My review of the first season of Picard was not like completely savage. There were parts of it that I really enjoyed. Um, but yes, I mean, season two is a total loss. Season two was one of the worst seasons of television I've ever seen. And so coming out of that, I think the challenge is for season three to make the show about something that is happening right now, not about something that happened 30 years ago, to make a show that looks ahead instead of constantly looking back, to make a show that makes sense, where characters have understandable goals that we see them working towards, and we as the audience can comprehend and understand why they're doing what they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish, which is basic writing, but is something that season two completely failed to do, which is one of the reasons why I call it not just bad, but bafflingly bad. A story, both in terms of individual episodes and the season as a whole, that is coherent, that proceeds at a decent pace, that feels like there's enough story for the number of episodes you have, not too much, or in the case of season two, far too little. Just stuff like that. Just get your shit together, and hopefully come up with a story, or at the very least with an ending that allows us to sort of part company with these characters. For the love of God, for the last time, please make this the farewell for all of these characters. I don't ever want to see any of these characters in a Star Trek show ever again, as much as I love them. Make this the end, and try to impart some meaning to it, some poetry, some emotion, some tragedy, some wistfulness, some bittersweetness, whatever, just something, so that when it's over, we can say, well, it was nice to spend this time with these characters again. And the farewell to them this time was satisfying, Those are the challenges. It's the basics. It's the biggest challenges for the show is the basics, because in season two, it didn't nail any of the basics. And I feel like that's why they're basics. You kind of have to nail them. And if you don't do that, you don't really have a show. So yeah, there you go. Black Cover 95, while watching Ask Away number 125, I misunderstood what you were, I guess, saying. What you were and thought you were producing AI written Stuffy and Friends episodes. What would that be like? P.S. You missed an opportunity for a Stuffy cameo in the last Ensign's Log episode, 124. He could have been at Ensign Con cosplaying his Spot. I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't really like to do stuff like that. I mean, I did some like Stuffy character, not even cameo. Well, I guess there was one Stuffy cameo, like a vocal cameo of Stuffy in an episode of the series I used to do, the Whirlpool, back a couple years ago, as part of one of the ads that would play during the fictional show that the Whirlpool is about, and one of them was for Stuffy's food charity, the Mid-Atlantic Food Bank that he used to work for. So I mean, it's not that my hands are not completely clean. I have done that before. But I don't know. Bringing Stuffy into the Ensign's Log as like a wink, wink. It just feels a little indulgent, and a little self-satisfied, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who listen to the Ensign's Log who have no idea who Stuffy is, or have no idea, have never seen one of my Stuffy videos, and it would just be, it would just be for me. It would just be like, let me put Stuffy in here, and it's like I don't really want to do that, I agree that would have been the time to do it. Having Stuffy cosplay a Spot would have been cute, but I don't really, I try not to do those jokes unless I have like a really good one that I just, can't resist doing. What would an AI written Stuffy and Friends be like? I think I had ChatGPT write a Stuffy episode for me a few months ago, and it was nothing that I ever intended to share. And I'm just nothing that I'm going to actually shoot or whatever. But I just wrote a prompt that described, I think it just had Stuffy and me, Steve, in it. And I can't even remember what it was about, but I just described the characters very briefly and described the scenario and let it kind of do its thing. And it was in the ballpark. I like it. You could tell that I hadn't actually written it. And it was off, as a lot of chat GPT stuff is. You can just tell, like, there's just something a little off about this. But it wasn't like if I had wanted to, I guess I could have taken what it wrote and done a rewrite of it without having to radically change it and sort of smoothed it out and made it usable as a stuffy script. But um, yeah, I mean, it would be like a stuffy episode, but probably not as funny. Because I've noticed when you ask it to write jokes, it doesn't really excel at that. Usually, it has actually written some things for me that I did think were really funny, but that's by far the exception rather than the rule. So, kind of a slightly off model, not as funny stuffy video would be the AI version. Next is Brian out of Good Murph Jokes Salas. With the passing of the talented and wonderful Annie Wershing, I got to thinking about her rather excellent performance as the Borg Queen on Picard, and I could not help but wonder, is there any one-time Trek guest star you wish we could have gotten more appearances from? I personally would love to have seen Berlinghoff Rasmussen have some more shenanigans to get up to. Thanks in advance. Love the channel. Live long and prosper. Throws Vulcan gang sign, by which I assume you mean this. Oh no, it's the Vulcan gang. Look out. No, there isn't. No, there isn't. And I think Star Trek has been doing that too much lately. I don't like, and part of this is there, it's just a difference in the way I interact with the product as opposed to how a lot of other fans do. Like when I see a character in an episode and they seem like they're just there for a one-time guest shot and there's not really a plan to bring them back as a recurring character. It's obvious that they're there for what, like Berlinghoff Rasmussen. Doesn't seem like they're setting up a recurring character there. He shows up, he does his thing. It's a really good episode. I really like that episode. He gets caught. Picard says, "Welcome to the 24th century," and they take him away, and you presume that he's in prison somewhere. I don't expect to see him again, and it's not that I don't like the character, and it's not like I would. It's just not the way I think the show should be written, and I just don't think that things that were created as one-shot deals, especially if they were created as one-shot deals, and then it's been 30 years and it hasn't been followed up yet. Just let it be. Don't just come up with something new. Make up something new, for the love of God. So no, there really isn't anybody. I mean, there are guest stars or one-shot characters that I have thought were very good, but no, I don't want to see them again. Like they had their shot, they had their episode, they had their story, and if it's something I think back on fondly and I like, then it was probably pretty good. But it doesn't mean I want to see him again. It's a big universe. It's a big world, And the nature of a Star Trek show, especially sort of a traditional Star Trek show where it's people on a ship and they're traveling through the galaxy and they're visiting different places, you don't really expect to see the same people, more than once if it's someone that they met along the way. So no, there really isn't anybody. No, make up new people. I want to see new people. Joe C. Hi, Steve. YouTube has been suggesting videos by Axanar, a Star Trek fan film. I seem to remember that Axanar was beat down severely by Paramount years ago for copyright infringement. Did I get that wrong? It seems like they're back in production again. No, you got it right. Axanar, actually, not only was Axanar beat down severely for copyright infringement, Axanar was the reason that Paramount clamped down on fan films in general. If you remember, up until the clamp down about, what was it, 7 or 8 years ago now, something like that. Paramount used to be very accommodating about fan films. Like as long as you weren't making money off of it, they basically were completely hands off and let people do whatever they wanted. And you could even do stuff like in Star Trek Continues and Star Trek New Voyages, or what was the film with that Tim Russ directed, Gods and Men. You know, there were several like really high profile fan productions, Star Trek fan productions that, you know, starred actors who had been in actual official Star Trek productions. And, you know, those fan series like New Voyages and Star Trek Continues, they, you know, they produced lots of episodes and they were of relatively high quality. And, you know, they got on like that for years, and Paramount was just happy to let them do it. And then what happened is Axanar started using Star Trek intellectual property to fundraise for their production. And they weren't just spending the money, you know, taking the money they made and putting it toward the actual Axanar movie they wanted to make. They were using it to build a studio, to buy equipment, to basically purchase assets that they could then use to do other stuff, you know, to make their own movies, to do, you know, to do stuff beyond the Axanar project. And Paramount saw that and they said, well, you're making a profit off of our intellectual property. And that's the rule that's what we told you all, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't use our intellectual property to make a profit off of it. And that's what the Axanar production company was doing. So Paramount said, all right, you know, you knew the rules, you broke the rules, and now we're not only going to clamp down on you, we're going to lay down the law for everybody. And now nobody gets to make any fan films except, and they did make a couple of very narrow boundaries within which you can do it. And that's, I think, what Axanar is doing. You are still allowed to make a Star Trek fan film, but you can't make it, you can't do more than 2 episodes. And each episode can't be more than 15 minutes long. So they impose like a very strict limitation, and you can't use any actors that have been in actual like official Star Trek productions. So no professional Star Trek actors, and you can't do more than 30 minutes total and no more than 2 episodes of 15 minutes each. So those are the rules. And I believe I haven't been paying any attention to Axanar because the Axanar project didn't really interest me to begin with. I mean, it looked good, like in terms of the production value that they had come up with, like it looked aesthetically and in terms of production value, it looked good, but the story I didn't give 2 shits about. So I wasn't really that excited for it in the first place, but I believe that the plan is they're still trying to produce their 2 15-minute episodes that they're allowed to do. So I think if they're back in production, it's for that. But like I say, I don't know for sure because I didn't pay attention to them before they ruined everything for everybody else who was doing fan films, and I don't pay any attention to them now. Kier is here. I had my first ever counseling session last Friday. It didn't go too well. I've been so afraid of talking about the bad stuff that I just didn't. He asked about my childhood to get an understanding of where I'm coming from, but I could only offer surface answers. That night, I woke up crying. I dreamt of all the stuff I could talk about. Have you ever been to counseling? Is that normally how it begins, with small cracks in the wall until it falls down? Because the NHS is underfunded and overworked, it may be a few weeks before my next appointment. I'm hoping to do better next time. Thank you for the lighthearted videos in such times. Well, I'm glad my videos have been of use to you in this time. That means a lot to me, and I'm glad I can help in whatever little way I can. No, I've never been to counseling, so I can't speak to the way it goes. I mean, I've known people who have been in counseling in some cases, like, you know, long term. Like I know when my parents split up, my father was in counseling for about a year afterwards, and I never went with him. I don't know what went on in the sessions. Like it's between him and his therapist, but I know he has spoken very highly of it and said that it really, really helped him, you know, sort of get through the rough patch after the end of his marriage. And he still speaks very highly of it today, which is great because if you knew my dad, you would not think of him as the kind of guy who would go to therapy and then be willing, you know, to talk about it and really, extol the virtues of it afterwards. You would think like, oh, he's a man's man. He keeps his feelings to himself. He doesn't want to talk to a therapist, but he did. And he apparently committed himself to it and really, stuck with it and trusted the process and came out much better on the other side of it. So, I think that's wonderful, but I know I can't speak from experience as to how it goes. And I would imagine it's probably different for everybody. I'm sure you're not the only person to have started therapy and been frustrated at first or been uncertain about it at first or felt like maybe things were getting worse instead of getting better. But hopefully if you stick with it and you are able to stick with it, um you know that it'll, as you say, you hope it'll get better next time. And I hopefully it will get better, if not next time, then the time after that, or the time after that. Eventually, over however long you decide to go, you will benefit from it. It will help you. I think that's the idea. But I don't think there's any one particular way that it usually goes. I'm sure that um, that differs, by the individual. But the important thing is that you're going. The important thing is that you saw a need. You decided that this was something that could help you, or this was something that you wanted to do or had to do, and you did it. So good for you. I'm very happy for you. I'm glad, even though the first session did not go well, I'm glad that you went, and I'm glad that you're planning on going back. And I hope the next time goes well too. I really do. Um, Next question is from Michael Haneline, who also wants to start referring to his own fists as his hammers of justice. As you know, I was pretty bummed the last couple weeks. Usually my go-to comfort is Batman the Animated Series, but I had just finished a rewatch and decided to give Batman the Brave and the Bold another chance. Years ago, I found it too silly, but on this fresh viewing, I really liked it. It really leans into Silver Age cheese without constantly pointing at things to just say, isn't this dumb, or in general feeling like it's ashamed to be Batman. I love seeing Batman fist fight a giant moth in a giant jar filling with gas, then cut a Batman-shaped hole complete with ears with his bat laser to escape, while Batgirl goes on about how nostalgic death traps make her, all done in complete earnestness. I loved lines like, wherever evil lurks, I'll be there with my hammers of justice to fight for decency and defend the innocent. What did you think of Brave and the Bold? Have you ever rewatched something you didn't get into the first time but found an unexpected appreciation for the second time around? I have not seen all of Brave and the Bold, but what of it I have seen, I have really, really liked. And for the reasons you describe, I do love the Silver Age Batman. I love Silver Age comics in general. And yes, Brave and the Bold is absolutely a an homage of Batman from the Silver Age. It is goofy and silly and completely um, unself-conscious, and I love it. Like I said, I haven't watched all of it, but the episodes I have seen, I have really, really enjoyed. And I know Jason speaks very highly of it too. I think Jason has seen the whole thing, and he's been recommending it to me for years. And I haven't seen the whole thing, but what of it I have seen, I've thought was wonderful. Have I ever rewatched something I didn't get into the first time, but found an unexpected appreciation for the second time around? I know there's something. I'm trying to think of it. I know there's something. Well, I'll tell you, in terms of movies, I know there's probably a TV show and I just can't think of it. But in terms of movies, there's Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. For years, The Shining was my least favorite Stanley Kubrick movie. And Stanley Kubrick is like my favorite director. I love Kubrick's films, but The Shining was always the one of his where I would watch it and I would go, I don't like this. I don't appreciate this. This isn't for me. I don't see what the big deal is. Why is this considered a classic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I felt that way about it for years. And then, one time I watched it probably about, I don't know, 15 years ago. I'm not sure. And it was like I was watching it again for the first time. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I don't know what was different. Maybe I was different. I don't know. But a movie that I had had very little use for, all of a sudden I was watching it and I was thinking, this is great. Why have I never thought this was so great before, So that's a big one. I can't think of the. I know there's a TV show that fits the same. That would be also a good answer to the question, but I can't think of it. But The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Chat GPT on behalf of Stephen G. Clenard, who can no longer be bothered to waste time insulting you. Here's an AI Stuffy episode for you. These breadsticks are amazing, Stuffy. I know, right? And have you tried the salad? It's always fresh. Definitely. You know, I think Phil Collins is seriously underrated. His music just speaks to my soul. I completely agree. And have you seen those Thomas Kincaid paintings? They're like little slices of heaven on canvas. Absolutely. He's the master of light. It's amazing how he captures the magic of the holidays in his work. I know, right? It's like he transports you to this warm and cozy world with a few brushstrokes. Exactly. We should make it a tradition to come here to Olive Garden and talk about Phil and Thomas every year. I think that's a great idea. It's always so much fun to catch up over endless breadsticks and salad. Not a question, Stephen. Not a question. And also, like I said earlier, it doesn't quite capture Stuffy's voice, does it? David Colby. Good news, Steve. Ages and ages and ages ago, I mentioned I was going to write a book, and now at last it has both come out and is now selling so well that I'm going to write the sequel books, which means you and Stuffy will get to cameo in the second season as one of the resistance fighters in the desperate battle against the twin clones of Hitler that have conquered the east coast of the United States. Should there be a slow motion, incredibly dramatic, heroic death scene a la every war movie ever made, but it's just a stuffed animal slowly being shredded by machine guns as the main character's like, Stuffy, no! Yes, absolutely. Yes. 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 Duan, okay, why do you hate Loxana Troy? Seeing the captain react to her was always funny to me. Okay, so I'll try to keep this brief. There are two reasons why I consider Loxana Troy to be far and away my least favorite Star Trek character. First reason, and probably the most immediate reason, is that for me, she has what in the wrestling business they call go away heat. What that means is because when you say you like seeing the captain react to her, right? The other characters react to Loxana, with irritation, with uh, you know, aggravation, right? Because she's an aggravating character. And the idea is, I think, she's supposed to be, like a heel wrestler is, in that, yeah, we're not rooting for her. We're sort of rooting against her. We find her irritating. We have negative feelings toward her, but in a way that makes us want to keep watching her. And we want to see how the other characters will react to her. And there's an entertaining value to it that you apparently find. I don't. To me, she has go away heat. And in wrestling, go away heat means that the heel wrestler is not someone who you hate, but in a way that makes you want to keep watching. You hate them in the sense that you are sick and tired of seeing them on your TV and you don't want to see them anymore. You're not watching hoping that one of the good guys will beat them up or win the match or get revenge or whatever. You're not watching to see what dastardly thing they'll do next. You just are tired of seeing them and you don't want to see them anymore, no matter what they do, period. That's how I feel about Loxana Troy. I don't care what the intended purpose of her is in the show. I don't care that she's supposed to be like that. She doesn't entertain me. She doesn't interest me. She annoys me, like for real, and I don't want to watch her. The second reason is I think she is a bad person. Like, I think the way she treats people and the way she behaves toward other characters in the show is inexcusable and wrong. And she is not entertaining enough, obviously, see reason one, for me to want to keep watching her, given the fact that she is such a fucking terrible person. She's a terrible parent to her daughter. She completely ignores everything Deanna tells her. She routinely violates Deanna's boundaries, is domineering, is overbearing, is completely dismissive of what Deanna wants as an adult child, routinely interferes or tries to interfere in her romantic life or her personal life in completely inappropriate ways, despite knowing and having been told repeatedly by Deanna that Deanna doesn't want her to do that. She violates everybody else's privacy and boundaries that she comes into contact with. She reads people's minds without permission and then tells everybody what she's reading in their mind. She's just a horrible person. And her behavior cannot be condoned by anyone. And that would be fine if she was also an entertaining character. Like if you're a fictional character and you're a terrible person, you're a fictional character. I don't care if you're a terrible person, as long as you're entertaining or interesting or compelling in some way. And she's not. So to hell with her. That's in a very brief description. Those are my problems. That's why I hate Loxana Troy. John Burns, hey Steve, hydrate. Man, that was a great episode of The Last of Us. You know, the one everybody's talking about with Nick Offerman. Last Wednesday, my mother passed away. And by the way, I saw this, John. I'm very sorry to hear this. Thursday, I started coughing and couldn't stop until this morning. Got meds for cough and cold. I hope the cold stays away for good. There were a lot of kindnesses for me on Facebook. It's interesting and maybe a little funny to note that privacy laws might be a problem for the Biden government. Boy, this is just all over the place, isn't it? There have been athletes who have collapsed while playing various sports in the early 80s. This is like so random. There have been athletes who have collapsed while playing various sports. In the early 80s, one such athlete died of a cocaine overdose, Len Bias. Over a decade ago, Chris Letting collapsed. Letting had to reveal his condition, a hole in his heart. But with privacy laws, okay, here, maybe this is coming back. With privacy laws, people claim the vaccine is the reason for these collapses, leading to problems for the Biden administration. Okay, now I see how it fits together. Do you think privacy laws should be lifted for pandemics? No. No, I don't think privacy laws should be lifted for pandemics. What I think should be done, and what is being done, to be fair, but what needs to be done more effectively and more extensively is for medical experts, especially the ones working for the government, whose job it is to try and encourage people to get the vaccine if they haven't gotten it yet. They need to make it clear, okay, these are not observed side effects for these vaccines. Like if someone has some kind of, medical emergency, and then afterwards they or their family or somebody tries to say, that was because of the vaccine, and there's no evidence whatsoever that the vaccine has ever caused anything like that reaction, then that message needs to be sent. Say, hey, look, we don't know exactly what happened. We need to respect the privacy of this person, and it's between them and their doctor and whatever they choose to share or not share and whatever. You can't diagnose somebody from a distance, and all the caveats that you need to, apply for something like this to speak about it responsibly. They need to say, with all of that said, there's no evidence that the vaccine has ever caused anything like this to happen. And in light of that, it is extremely unlikely that the vaccine was linked to whatever this is, right? I think that message needs to be sent. But no, I don't think they need to lift medical privacy laws, nor should they. But I do think they need to push back harder, and more effectively against that sort of thing for sure. And once again, just so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle, my sincere and earnest condolences on the loss of your mother. That sucks, John. And I'm glad that you got some kindness on Facebook, and I hope it helped. And thanks for the question, and thanks for being around here. I really appreciate it. Scott P. Hey, Steve, I recently rewatched the DS9 episode, The Die is Cast. We just watched that one not too long ago on Truck Reluctantly, I believe. A great episode all around. I was particularly captivated by the torture scene between Garrick and Odo, while the body horror of Odo's decaying form as he's denied the ability to return to his liquid state was truly discomforting. The performances between Renee Auberjonois and Andrew Robinson were what really captured me. What are some two-person scenes in Trek in which you were truly impressed by both performers the entire time? Another obvious example, also involving a Cardassian torturing an officer, would be any scene between Picard and Gul Madred in Chain of Command. Of course, it doesn't have to be something quite as intense. More subtle and subdued performances are also welcome. Completely unrelated fun fact, Rondo Hatton, star of the MST3K classic The Brute Man, is from Hagerstown. I thought you might like to know you share a hometown with a Hollywood legend. Well, thank you for sharing that. I did actually know that, but I really appreciate you sharing it with me all the same. Yes, Rondo Hatton from The Brute Man he's been gone for quite a while now. I think he died in like the 40s or the 50s. He died actually not too much longer after he made that movie. But yeah, he was from Hagerstown. So there you go. Well, yeah, obviously the Picard and Gul Madred scenes with Patrick Stewart and David Warner from Chain of Command are the first ones I think of. They're phenomenal. A lot of scenes in various Star Trek productions between Shatner and Nimoy, I think, are fantastic. I think their scenes together in City on the Edge of Forever, when they're talking about what has to be done about Edith Keeler, I think are just extremely well done and good acting from both of them there. I think the scene that I made a video about from Star Trek VI, the dining on ashes scene in Spock's quarters, where Kirk comes to visit Spock and they have a little conversation about, their lives. And it's the one where Spock says, can it possibly be true that we have grown so old that we have outlived our usefulness? And that's a great scene and an incredibly well acted scene. And I mean, of course, Spock's death scene in Star Trek 2 as well. You have to point to, like, it's just, it's fantastic. The scenes between Kira and who is thought to be Gul Darhe'el in Duet, Deep Space Nine, are fantastic. Are just fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you could just go on forever. This is any number of scenes between Odo and Quark. I mean, they're always great together, and they raise each other's performance level consistently. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot for sure, but those are the ones I can sort of summon off the top of my head. Thomas James Wright, I know I busted your chops in the last Q&A with the Star Trek economics question. Sorry, kind of, but I won't nail you with some crazy question this time. I hope you've been watching The Last of Us. If not, you can toss this question aside. This last episode, number 3, hung me out to dry. I'm not typically the type of a person to get all teary-eyed from a film, but if I do, the film did its job. Episode 3 had me bawling nearly the entire time, right up there with The Light Within. I think you mean The Inner Light. Maybe even more so. Character development, plot, rise and fall, absolutely genius from my point of view. I just want to know what you thought, even if you disagree. Take care. Another econ question is sure to arise sooner or later. I have been watching The Last of Us. I thought episode 3 was amazing. I thought it was brilliant. I loved it. I was in awe of it. It was beautiful. It was art. It was fucking amazing. The show has been good altogether so far. Like, I've enjoyed The Last of Us. I've never played the game. I have no interest in playing the game, but I saw that Pedro Pascal was going to be in it. I saw that it was being produced by some of the same people who did the Chernobyl series, which is absolutely incredible. If you've never seen the HBO Chernobyl miniseries, it is, I mean, it's rough. Like, it's rough. So, don't be expecting like a fun romp through the grass. Like, you figure Chernobyl, but it's brilliant. It's phenomenal. It's just, Jesus Christ, it's good. And so, I saw that and I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out. And I've thought it was fantastic so far. And episode 3 is, I mean, what else can you say? Like, it's stunning. It's stunning. It's so good. And Jason and I actually talk about it a lot on Late Seating Uncut, the just released this week episode of Late Seating Uncut, which is only available to Let Me Listen podcast patrons. But if you do happen to be a patron of Let Me Listen podcasts, or you're thinking about becoming one, and you care what I think and what Jason thinks about The Last of Us, and specifically episode 3, check out Late Seating Uncut for the most recent episode, which is our review of Boxcar Bertha. And we talk about The Last of Us during the sort of the pre-show portion before we get into the actual recorded podcast. And yeah, we both really loved it. And I thought it was, one of the things I mentioned talking to Jason about it is the final shot of the episode is one of the most beautiful and perfectly conceived and executed final shots of an episode of television that I have seen in a very, very long time, maybe even ever. Like it's just, I mean, everything about the episode is good. The performances, the writing, the filmmaking, it's all just amazing. That final shot is otherworldly. It is so good. So yes, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well. It seems like a lot of people really enjoyed it, and I think that's terrific because it was awesome. Azalea Jane, hi Steve. This question might seem a bit self-serving, but here goes. A couple years ago, I made a video inspired by your Atheist Reads series. Instead of responding to Christian apologetics, I began responding to the commentary in the book Bhagavad Gita as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta. Bhaktivedanta Swami. God damn it. It's like now speaking of Jason, that's how Jason reads non-English names when we do late seating. Bhaktivedanta Swami, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement in the West. The book was intended and used to recruit and indoctrinate me and other Westerners, so I think it's very fair game. I've made one video so far. I'm wondering if I can ask you to give it a watch and consider leaving a comment. I'm not sure if I should leave URLs in these forms, but you can search Azalea Jane Bhagavad Gita and find it. Your encouragement / blessing, or even knowing you'd seen it would do a lot to motivate me to make more videos in the series. Also, for an actual inquiry on the subject, did you ever consider responding to non-Christian apologetics aimed at Christians or other Westerners? I will make an effort to watch your video. I won't promise to, but yes, if I think about it in the coming days, I will search for it and watch it. And if I watch it, I will definitely leave you a comment to let you know I've been there. I thought about it, but I found actually, I mean, your choice of subject matter sounds terrific. When I was still doing Atheist Reads, I thought about it several times. And of course, I would get comments from people that would say, like, why are you always responding to Christian apologetics? Why don't you ever respond to Islamic apologetics? And I really couldn't find any, at least none that I thought would be suitable for the format of that show. So I never really did it. I did one book that was like a Christian response to Islam. I did that. So it was like an atheist responding to a Christian apologist responding to Islam. And that was interesting for kind of a change of pace and allowed me to engage a little bit with some of the arguments or some of the claims of the Islamic faith as opposed to just the Christian faith. So it was like I said, it was an interesting change of pace, but it still wasn't quite responding to Islamic apologetics because like I said, I really couldn't find any, at least not in English, that I thought would work. So I never really did. But yeah, I did have the idea. I mean, I did think about it, of course, but there's just way more Christian apologetics available than apologetics from other faiths. Gee, I wonder why that is. Yeah, so I considered it, but I never actually did it. General Contact Unit Problem Child. Suppose J.K. Rowling believed all the same stuff, but she didn't really talk about it or do anything about it. Like, it was just a shitty aspect of her as a person that didn't really affect anything else. Would you still say it's wrong to buy her content? There's an alternate history writer called S.M. Sterling who's intensely Islamophobic. Like in 2009, he got banned from alternatehistory.com because he said the world would be a better place if every Muslim man died. The thing is, as far as I'm aware, Sterling doesn't ever really talk about his anti-Muslim beliefs. He's not using his platform to go after Muslims like JK is using hers to go after trans people. I mean, I believe he only made that shitty comment on alternatehistory.com because someone asked him his views on Islam. For that reason, I feel like continuing to buy his books is way less unethical than buying Rowling's books. Does that make sense, or am I just making excuses for the fact that I want to keep buying the shitbag's books? It makes sense, yes. And I agree with you that what Rowling is doing is worse because she is using her platform, her fame, her wealth, her influence to actively campaign to harm the lives of trans people. She is doing and making a great effort to do ongoing harm to real people. And that is worse than a writer who, does not seem, according to you, and I've never even heard of this guy, but taking you at your word, and, he doesn't use his platform or his writing to spread his beliefs. He just happens to have these utterly disgusting beliefs. Yeah, that's not as bad. Now, it's as I always say when people talk about, separating the art from the artist and, what's the line that someone can cross where you'll say, I won't buy their stuff anymore. I won't be a supporter of theirs anymore. It's case by case, and it's up to you as an individual. Personally, if I knew that a writer I had been a fan of had said at some point, even if it was just on a message board somewhere, that the world would be a better place if every Muslim man died, that's a pretty fucked up thing to say. It's a pretty fucked up thing to think. If I knew that someone had said that, I would not buy any more of their books. But that's me. You make your own decision. And I don't think that you're like a terrible person for making a different decision than I would have made. But I do definitely agree with you that J.K. Rowling and what she is doing is worse, just because it is causing active harm to people in the world, which apparently S.M. Sterling is not doing. So, yes, Rowling is worse. Agent Meister, up and away, Web. Peldor Joy, Steve. I've often gushed about my love for Batman comics published between 1986 and 2006, post-crisis, and I can say the same thing about Superman comics published during this period also. The most famous event during this run was the Death of Superman storyline, which I love, by the way, but I thoroughly enjoyed John Byrne's run on the Man of Steel origin story, the marriage to Lois, and Lex Luthor's stint as president. Jeff Johns had me sobbing when Pa Kent died, and who could forget Loeb and Sale's wonderful Superman for All Seasons. I could never get into the silliness of the Golden or Silver Ages, but the post-crisis Superman comics really made the character accessible to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this period of Superman comics, and are there any stories you like that I haven't mentioned? Also, is it okay to say that Brandon Routh is my favorite Superman? As ever, keep up the great work. Fuck Chick-fil-A. And have a great weekend. Well, thank you very much, my friend. You have a great weekend too. Any Superman stories from the post-crisis period that you didn't mention that I really like? Yeah, you mentioned Superman for All Seasons, which is wonderful. What about was what's so funny about Truth, Justice, in the American Way? Was that from this period? I know it was from early 2000s. Is it from post 2006 or pre 2000? I think it's from pre 2006. But yeah, what's so funny about Truth, Justice, in the American Way? So I think it was it Action Comics 675 or something like that, or Superman Volume 2 numbers. It was one of the not one of the 00 milestones, but it was for one of the milestones. I think it was a 25 something or 75 something issue of Action Comics, I think. But if you're a Superman fan, I'm sure you know what story I'm talking about. And yeah, that one, that's a classic. And kind of a reorientation, kind of like a return to first principles for Superman in the comics, because it kind of pushes back against that idea that, well, Superman's not as interesting a character to modern audiences because he's not gritty enough, and he's not morally compromised, and all of that stuff. And it's sort of arguing like, no, that's the very thing that makes Superman an essential character for this time in history, especially, that he is the good guy. He is the person who tries to make the right choice. And his stories are not about, his angst and him being brooding and him, compromising his principles. It's the very fact that he struggles to hold on to his principles, and that he does the right thing, and that he is enduringly and dependably good. That's why we need him. I thought that was fantastic, and it's a good story beyond the message and the arguing for that version of the character. So I would nominate that one. And is it okay to say that Brandon Routh is your favorite Superman? It's okay to say that to me, buddy. I love Brandon Routh as Superman. I think Superman Returns is the best Superman movie. So yeah, it's totally okay to say that to me. Other people might argue with you, but I mean, I remember when it was a few years ago now when they did the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover on the Arrowverse shows on the CW, and Brandon Routh got to play Superman again. He played like one of the alternate universe versions of Superman, and he had the costume that was inspired by the Kingdom Come Superman costume. And it's like, you just look at that guy with those looks, with that physique. He's 6'4", and it's like, God damn it, this guy was born to play Superman. How could he have only played Superman in one movie and, a couple episodes of this TV show? Like, the fucking guy was born to play Superman. To this day, he's like my age, maybe a year or two older than me. He could be playing Superman right now. He could have been playing Superman continuously for the last 15 years. Like, he was born to play Superman, and he was a great Superman in Superman Returns. So yes, of course you can say he's your favorite. I'm never going to be mad at you for saying that. Not at all. Pervy Shazy. Hi, Steve. What are your thoughts on prostitution and escort services? Assuming that in a perfect world, everything is consensual and that the industry is regulated to the point that exploitation and trafficking are actively discouraged and heavily punished, it's easy for a horny bastard like me, having no luck with women, to just hold the position of legalize it already. But I would like to hear some sober arguments about legalization, assuming that you don't support it or just want to play devil's advocate. Thanks. Sober arguments against legalization. I mean, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be legal. I mean, again, assuming that the requirements that you built into your question can be met, assuming that it is consensual on both sides, and that the sex workers themselves are being fairly compensated for their work, and that trafficking and exploitation and things like that are extremely rare, or ideally non-existent, but at least extremely rare and very difficult to do and get away with. As long as it's consensual and safe, and the workers are fairly compensated, I see no reason why it shouldn't be legal. Shouldn't it be a transaction between the two people, or however many people are involved? I don't see any reason not to. So I don't feel like playing devil's advocate. I think there are enough arguments against it as it is. I mean, I don't, I would almost certainly not be a patron of it, but that doesn't mean I think it should be illegal. If other people want to, as long as it's healthy and safe and fair, like what is the argument against it? Other than like a puritanical moral argument that's like, well, sex shouldn't be used that way, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, as long as there's no exploitation, and no significant risk to either side, like, hold whatever opinions about the morality of sex that you want, but you don't have any right to push those on other people, So no, I do support it. Given, on those conditions, I do support it, and I don't see any compelling argument against it. So there you go. Those are my thoughts. Just your friendly neighborhood, some random geek. I wish my friends like Joanna, Phoenix, Naz, and LQ have all the things they need to survive, live, and thrive. I wish the things they need aren't behind a paywall, like the cost of living. I wish they wouldn't have to beg online in order to live. I wish I had way more money so that I can give them those things that they need. If not me, then I wish others had the extra cash that they're willing to give to all those in need. I wish Joanna, Phoenix, Naz, and LQ had a sugar parent to just give them the money they need when they need it for whatever: clothes, food, rent, bills, pills, HRT, to find a good doctor, or even comfort food from DoorDash because they've no spoons or matches to cook. I really wish capitalism isn't around at all. I wish people weren't in favor of capitalism at all. But even some of your friends, Steve, are in favor of capitalism. I wish I could convince them not to be capitalists. Oh, well. Oh, question. Who is Natalie Merchant? And there was a band called 10,000 Maniacs? Yes. This is what you all miss when you don't watch the patron and members hangouts on the last Sunday of the month. Yes, that was a brief topic of conversation. We talked about, yeah, Geek had, I guess Geek had never heard of 10,000 Maniacs. Yes, Natalie Merchant was at one time the lead singer of 10,000 Maniacs, which was a band in the 80s and 90s. Their big hit in the early 90s was These Are Days to Remember. You may remember that song if you're old enough, because it was fucking everywhere in, like, what was it, 1992, 1993, something like that. It was used in TV shows and movies and commercials and everywhere. It was, yeah. She has a very distinctive voice. If you ever heard a Natalie Merchant song or a 10,000 Maniac song from her tenure as the lead singer of the band, I think you would recognize it immediately. She's a wonderful singer. Yeah, and she released some singles on her own that were, got a lot of airplay. Carnival, Kind and Generous, Wonder was another one, again from like the mid 90s. So yeah, she's a singer, and she was the lead singer of 10,000 Maniacs, which is a bit of a misnomer because I think the band had maybe 5 or 6 people in it, not anywhere close to 10,000, and to my knowledge none of them were maniacs. I don't think they were. They might have been, but I don't think so. At least no diagnosed maniacs in the band. Here's Dana's question. Happy Friday, Steve. I still can't figure out how to word that other one I was going to ask, so here's something different. Oh, mixing it up. You're throwing me a curveball here. Actually, no, I don't think you would throw me a curveball because you hate baseball. You've said that you think 90 minutes is just about the perfect length for a movie. Why is that different from a television show? If a series means you don't have to introduce the characters every time, so it can be shorter, shouldn't the same hold true with a movie series? Budget aside, especially with streaming services now, why don't we see more variety in lengths? Or do you think it's moving that direction, but creators or the people investing in projects are making smaller, more gradual changes because people have gotten used to the 22, 45, 90-minute format? Well, I do think on streaming shows, you see some variation in runtimes. Like for a TV show that's meant to be shown on TV, the running time of a TV episode is pretty tight. Like a 1-hour drama is 44 minutes. And it's, there's some variation, but it's variation that you can measure in seconds. Like not every TV show winds up being 44 minutes exactly to the second, but it's never more than 30 seconds or so below or above that, right? It's a very, very tight window. It's 44 minutes for a 1-hour drama, and for a half-hour drama it's 22 minutes. And again, that's the number. That's how long the episode is, period, with just a tiny bit of wiggle room in either direction. But with a streaming show, unless there is some kind of requirement built in that the episodes have to, again, hit that exacting length because, maybe they might foresee trying to show the episodes on a television network at some point. If they're making it just for streaming and they presume that it will not be shown anywhere other than streaming for the life of the project, there is some wiggle room, and there are streaming episodes that, like for instance, the Strange New Worlds, the new Star Trek show that I love. There are episodes of Strange New Worlds, and actually, you know what, for Discovery as well, there are episodes that are close to an hour. And there are episodes that I think there was an episode of Discovery in maybe its first season that was like 38 minutes, which is way short for a 1 hour show on like a TV network. But on streaming, it's not that big of a deal. If your episode comes out 38 minutes and that's all it needs, and you've got everything done in that show that you need to do, okay, put it up 38 minutes. You know, same thing with a longer episode. They're some of the best episodes of Strange New Worlds um, during its first season were, I think, 50 minutes. Which would be fine if you were making a show in the 60s or the 70s when the running time of 1 hour TV shows was a little longer. Um, but nowadays, if you made a 50-minute long TV show and wanted to put it on a TV network, you'd have to cut 6 minutes out of that because they need that time for commercials, and there's not really a lot they can do about it. Like that's all been pre-sold. You have a deal with your sponsors. You give them so much commercial time per hour. And the show you're showing has to be 44 minutes, period. So they couldn't show that. They'd have to cut some shit out. But on streaming, not a problem. So there is some variation, not wild variation, but there is some variation. And I think that's probably how it should be. Like, I would not really welcome like 90-minute episodes of series to become a regular thing. I don't think there's any reason for that. I think 90 minutes is too long for an episode of a television series, but for a standalone movie, like, yeah, for most stories, 90 minutes is just about right. But for a TV show, I think half an hour or an hour is greatly preferable to 90 minutes. But streaming and such has introduced some variation. And like I say, I think that's a good thing. Isaiah Taylor, the creative craziness of Star Trek TNG plots and stories. So I had just watched both Final Mission and The Loss, and can we take a moment to notice the creative madness of how these episodes were conceived? An energy swirl thingy guards the only water on a moon, and Crusher has to frantically fumble with his tricorder and just let Crusher get the water. The Enterprise then encounters some living space confetti, and they have to turn the ship into a tuning fork to get away from it. Steve, help me! Anyway, this is far from a critique, and my autistic stoned mind loves it like something else. So creative and unique. I wonder if any of the script writers did recreational drugs and came up with these creative and intrinsic storylines. Man, what I would have given to be on the team of Star Trek TNG. Such a wondrous and creative piece of television. Agree or disagree? Well, agree for sure. Yeah, I mean, I love TNG. And you're right, those episodes that you mentioned, yeah, the Loss, where, yeah, like you said, the space confetti, where it's two-dimensional, and it surrounds the ship, and there are a lot of really cool ideas. And what was another one? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. I can't think of any. But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think recreational drugs had to be involved. I suppose perhaps they could have been, but I don't think it was a necessity. But yeah, there are some TNG plots that are wonderfully out of this world, so to speak, and yeah, they're great. They're great. I love TNG. I'm glad you pointed this out, because TNG doesn't get quite enough credit for its wacky side, because the tone of the episodes wasn't usually wacky. The tone was usually played straight, but the concepts for a lot of these episodes are completely out the fucking window. You're absolutely right. And it's wonderful. Jacob Monroe, what's the best thing to eat while watching Star Trek? What is the best thing to eat while watching Star Trek? Cellular peptide cake with mint frosting. Speaking of TNG and crazy TNG episodes, chicken sandwich and coffee. What are some other memorable references to food from Star Trek? There's Trouble with Tribbles, my chicken sandwich and coffee. And then there's Worf eating the cake in Data's dream, a cellular peptide cake with mint frosting. Yeah. And I'm sure there's other ones too that I'm forgetting, but yeah, I would say that. Have a nice dessert while watching Star Trek. Make yourself a nice delicious cellular peptide cake with mint frosting. Who doesn't love mint frosting, by the way? Underrated. Underrated. Okay, last patron and member question from CMAC, who is so far from late, it's bonkers, really. I know, right? Greetings, Steve. I've been in the middle of moving since late December, and I'm now just kind of settling into my new place. All good stuff, by the way, just a lot. I hope you're well. So here's a question for you. I know you're not a fan of Star Trek Picard, but given where we are at, what they've done in seasons 1 and 2, what would you pitch for season 3? Keeping continuity reasonably intact within the series to make it actually, good. Can it be done at this point? Yes, it can be. Of course it can be. And maybe it will be. Like I say, I don't expect it for season 3, but it's entirely possible that they will turn a corner and be like, let's get this right. And they'll get it right. And I hope they do. I was thinking about this earlier today. And obviously I don't have a lot of specifics because I'm just sort of brainstorming this. But to me, I would pitch a journey, not a conflict, not an enemy threatening the galaxy or threatening the Federation. Star Trek does that way too much. It's like ever since Nemesis and then the reboot movies, which again, and I've said many times, I love the reboot movies, but the reboot movies are all sort of, Kirk versus a bad guy, and it's like a conflict between Kirk and the bad guy. And it's like Star Trek since then has kind of forgotten how to tell other kinds of stories, except for Strange New Worlds, which is episodic, and they haven't felt the need to craft some kind of epic showdown. Um, I mean, the last couple of seasons of Discovery have been okay with that too. With making it about something other than building up to a collision between a hero and a villain. But no, I would start with the commissioning of a brand new Enterprise, the Enterprise F. We'll say that the Enterprise E was decommissioned a few years ago, and they've been building a new Enterprise ever since. And that Captain Picard's crew was, the only crew that ever, you know, operated the E. And now that the E has been decommissioned, and they're about to they're setting the Enterprise F off on its maiden voyage, and they've gathered the old crew of the Enterprise E together for the send off. And so that's why Picard and Riker and Beverly and Deanna and Worf and Geordi are there. And while they're on board the ship, they pick up a passenger, or they rescue somebody, or they get themselves involved in some kind of crisis, or some kind of mission in the first episode that enlists them or compels them to choose to enlist themselves in a mission to take a thing or a person or some MacGuffin of some kind from point A to point B, and point B is way the hell out there, far, far away, and it'll take a while to get there. And the season is the Enterprise F, which is not commanded by our old characters. Our classic old legacy characters are there, but we also have a brand new crew of the Enterprise F that is the actual crew of that ship. So we have a new captain and first officer and bridge crew, et cetera, et cetera. And they're not going to have a chance to take up a whole lot of space in the show, but they're going to be there, and we're going to give them enough time to develop them as characters so we get to know them as people. Not so that they can then have their own show after this season is over. That would not be my intention. The whole thing wouldn't be like meant to be a backdoor pilot for another show. It would meant to be showing life goes on. And just as Picard and company were once the next generation, now the new crew of the Enterprise F, they are now the next generation, and they are getting ready to go off on their own mission. And at the end of the season, when they reach their destination and whatever they're supposed to do has been fulfilled, and whatever final obstacles they need to overcome have been overcome, our veterans are going to depart and ride off into retirement. And the next generation, the new next generation that has been given control of the Enterprise F, are going to go off on their own missions and explore the galaxy and have their adventures for themselves. And whether or not we will ever actually see those adventures is not the point. The point is that has happened. The handoff has been made. The next generation has taken over, and there they go, right? And Picard and Riker and Crusher and everybody else, they get to fade away as they deserve to, and as hopefully we all want them to, in a dignified and satisfying and fulfilling way. So that's my general idea, and because it's a mission heading out, along the way, we can have standalone episodes. They can receive distress signals on the way to their final destination in episode 10. They can pass planets where there are anomalies or where there are things that they are compelled to investigate. And the classic crew can get involved in these, and the new crew that is in charge of the ship can get involved in these, and we can tell stories that, allow us to spend some time with our classic characters one more time, and also allow us to get to know the next generation coming in after them. And that in a very jumbled general way would be my idea. Yeah, that's something like that. Yeah, I mean, and it would be nice if you could find a way to tie it into Picard himself. Not a revenge plot, you know not some kind of deep, dark secret that Picard has that we've never heard about before that, alters his character in some fundamental way. Nothing like that. Just something that maybe, and not like a callback to the old show, not another legacy character. The only legacy characters will be the returning TNG cast. That's it. Nobody else. No more recurring guest stars from 30 years ago. Nobody from any other show except Seven, because she's already in the show. Find a reason to have the other Picard cast members on the ship too. Everybody's on the fucking ship, or maybe come up with a reason why you can run into them on one of the planets in one of the episodes between episode 1 and episode 10. I would like to have, all the Picard cast members that they didn't just brutally write off last season come back. So Seven should be there. Raffi should be there. Soji should be there. Even Elnor, fuck it, Elnor's in Starfleet now. He can be there. He can be on the new Enterprise. Picard pulled some strings, and Elnor's on the Enterprise. And maybe Raffi's there too. Maybe Raffi and Seven are both back in Starfleet. Elnor's there, so they're all part of the crew. They're all on the ship, But anyway, it's something like that, something like that. Maybe we can talk about it in the chat a little bit if people have other ideas. But that is it for the patron and member questions. Before I turn to the live chat, and I promise in a second, John Burnstone in a super chat already, and Hiram Bifidum. I will get to those super chats in just a minute, I promise. But first, before I turn full attention to the live chat, I have a Stuffy and Friends short to debut for you all, and I'm going to do that right now. I hope you will enjoy this newest Stuffy and Friends short. Here we go.
Cut the cards. Which half would you like?
This one.
Okay, pick that one up, please. Now, think of the secret number you chose at the beginning and deal that many cards face down onto the table.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Take the last card you dealt and flip it over, please. Is that your card?
Oh, Jesus Christ, that is my card! What the fuck? How did you do that?
No, Steve, it's not your card. I'm setting up a surprise ending.
He's a witch!
The card you picked is...
He's a witch!
In your shoe.
Sorry, I had my mic muted. Anyway, That was that I was as I was saying, that was the last Stuffy short that I actually had ready to go. I have scripts for 6 more that I haven't actually shot yet. So hopefully at some point between now and 2 weeks from now, I can have time to to make some more, and I'll have another Stuffy short to premiere for you next time. So, and you can hear me now, right? Yeah, I know okay, good. Dana, it's like when I'm watching one of your live streams. Anyway, yes, some random geek, professional streamer moment. Yeah, I muted myself on XSplit, and for some reason I also tapped the mute button on my mic, and I just forgot to untap. I forgot to unmute my actual physical microphone. But anyway, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed the Stuffy short. Now then, let me go back and catch up on some of these super chats. And I believe it's just these. Oh no, there's a whole bunch of them. Fadeaway X dropped one in and said, "Do you game? Have you seen anything regarding Star Trek Resurgence? Looks amazing. A new post Voyager cruise ship story, sadly delayed again." No, I don't game, and I have no interest in Star Trek games. But if it looks good to you, cool. I hope you enjoy it. John Burns dropped in a bunch of super chats. Why not Scientology apologists? I mean, I guess I could have done like Dianetics or something, but I just never really got around to it. John also said everything is consensual and tax collectors don't mind being called pimps. Everything is not consensual. Things that aren't consensual are not consensual. John also says Last of Us third episode was 80 minutes. Was it? I guess maybe. Yeah, because because the main portion of it, the Bill Frank stuff was about an hour, and then there was that was the Joel and Ellie stuff at the beginning and the end. And the first episode was 80 minutes as well. Yeah. So yeah. And the Last of Us is on HBO, and HBO has always been, because HBO is not commercially supported. It's a subscription service, and always has been, even before it had a streaming service. It has also been a little looser in terms of runtime requirements. Hiram Biffidum says, I crank the audio of TOS episodes in my head through earphones on my cell phone during labor tasks and athletic training, and my adrenaline skyrockets. I can see that. John Burns with a super chat again says, there's a video at YouTube History Bites channel. It's a retelling of Pizarro's capture of the Incan lands, where James Kirk is Pizarro. He even meets with the Queen of Spain to boldly go. You mean Shatner is Pizarro? Or that sounds interesting. 25 AD with some super chats here. It says, what would you do if you were financially reliant on a relationship with another content creator and you found out he was a sex harassment creep? Thinking about how judgmental I can be to Thomas Smith for not instantly cutting ties with Andrew Torres when OA is his main income source. Well, the thing is, they knew that Andrew was doing these sorts of things for years, and he continued to do them. It wasn't just like a one-time thing where someone came to them, not just Thomas, but the whole group, came to them, and then that was it. It was, they knew about it in, I think, 2017, and then they certainly didn't say anything publicly about it. And if they disciplined him privately in any way, it didn't take, because he continued to harass people for years after that. I think the most recent complaint has things happening last year, like 2022. So whatever they did, it didn't work, and they never told anybody about it, and they never went public with it, and they didn't actually kick him out and cut ties with him until it became a news story and it was widely known. So I find it really, really hard to take a charitable view. And look, I like Thomas. Thomas has always seemed like a good guy to me. I like a lot of those guys. But whether their income was tied to Andrew or not, I mean, look, Thomas had a podcast before he had a podcast with Andrew. Now, yeah, I think Opening Arguments was way, way more successful than Thomas's solo podcast. So, I mean, you're right about that. But still, like, you know, it's really hard to to feel any sympathy for him or for any of them in this instance. They are part of a family of very successful podcasts that they all make a living off of. And if indeed getting rid of Andrew would have been a threat to Thomas's income, surely they could have come up with something else for Thomas to do, that would have helped to ameliorate that. I'm not saying that he wouldn't have taken a hit to his income, but surely there were options. Whatever, I mean, and they're going to have to figure out something now. So I like I say, I have very little sympathy for them in this case. Another one from 255 AD, when disco jumped into the 3200s, it bugged that they picked up the tech so easily when Scotty barely understood anything in the 2360s. Dumb thing to care about. I just think that it would have slowed down the show. I don't think we really needed like a series of episodes devoted to the characters getting used to the technology. I think it's just narrative expediency. I don't think it's not necessarily a dumb thing to care about. I just think it would have been a dumb thing for the show to spend any serious amount of time on. And here's one from, more super chats. I appreciate the super chats, everybody. As soon as I get through these last two, I will turn back to the live chat. I promise. I'm just trying to catch up. Cast Iron Chaos says, Catwoman, what's the difference between a criminal and a clitoris? Batman will look for the criminal. Oh! So I guess you're not on the side that says that Batman goes downtown. You don't think Batman does that? I guess not, if he's not even looking for the clitoris. And here's one from Shelley Netzger Edgerton. Earl Grey hot, always with Star Trek. Now, that's a good one. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. What should, I think that could be your beverage. That could be your beverage. I don't know what else you're eating, but your beverage could be, of course, it would have to be tea Earl Grey hot. Okay, now back to the live chat. Sorry, everybody, but much appreciation for all the super chats. Thank you very much. And keep them coming. Hey. Let me scroll up and see what I missed. Cast Iron Chaos. I like that. Now I can hear Steve. Turn the mute back on. I like that. Isaiah Taylor says, I also watched Remember Me Stoned, and I really admired how they explained the universe and such. Definitely opened my mind, even if it was a goofy episode. Remember Me, again, fantastic episode. And one of the all-time great lines in the history of TNG. If there's nothing wrong with me, maybe there's something wrong with the universe. What a great line. Math Maru says, why did you stop the whirlpool? Well, because I got to the end of that season, of that story, and I took a break from it as I had planned to, and then I got divorced and I moved and I just never got back into it. I mean, I haven't completely shut the door on it. Like I would be totally up to do more. But I haven't even thought about what another season of the Whirlpool would be like. Because one of the things I liked about it was each individual episode was on a specific topic and was self-contained, but there was an overarching story that was moved along through each episode so that the season had kind of, a flow to it. And yeah, so I would want to do something else like that, but I would just have to figure out what that would be, but no, I it was basically, I stopped doing it because I was finished with that season and I never really had a chance to pick it up again. But perhaps I will at some point. David C. Drake, if you'd been offered a job as a writer or head writer for Picard season 3, would you accept it, or would the thought of trying to steer that ship have been too painful? No, if I had been, look, if I had been touched by a magic wand and I had been given like real creative power over the show, or like I was able to be the showrunner, and I was given assurances by the studio, look, you can make whatever show you want. I would definitely take that job, because just because season 1 and season 2 were shit doesn't mean season 3 would have to be shit too. Like there's no law of physics preventing season 3 from being good. I just don't foresee it because it doesn't seem like the people making the show have learned any lessons from their mistakes in the previous season. So why would this season be any different? But yeah, if I could have maybe not even complete creative control, but at least a substantial amount of creative control over the show, then yes, of course I would take that job. Um, Oh, at 255 AD, I want to clarify something. SM Sterling's Islamophobia is entirely evident in his writing once you know how he feels. Like it's not explicit, but it's there. Well, then fuck that guy. Radical Bacon says, so Steve, I think hobbits would like baseball. What do you think? I don't think hobbits would like baseball because baseball is awesome and hobbits suck. So hobbits wouldn't like something that was awesome because they suck. Okay, Dana says, why is 90 minutes too long for a series, but not too long for a segment of a movie series? Because usually, not always, there are exceptions, but usually movies are more or less self-contained standalone stories. And I think 90 minutes is usually enough time to tell a complete standalone story, beginning, middle, and end. So even if the movie is part of a series, even if it's like, you know, a Star Trek movie or a Star Wars movie or a Marvel movie where it's taking place, you know, within a larger context, the movie itself still has its own individual story. And 90 minutes usually is enough time to tell a 90-minute story. Whereas, and movies, you know, a movie comes out, you know, once a year, once every couple years. Or if it's like a Marvel franchise and it's a really busy year for Marvel, there might be 2 or 3 movies that year, but it's like a movie every few months at least. Whereas a TV episode, it's usually, you know, once a week while the show is being released. So, you know, ooh, Daryl Lett says, I wonder if Rondo Hatton, when he was younger, ever got any of his eats at Sheets. You know, was Sheets around back then? I guess maybe it was. How? Let me Google this. Sheets. And also, was it in Hagerstown? Well, let me see. Sheets was founded in 1952. Yep, nope. Doesn't work. Sheets was founded in 1952 and Rondo died in 1946. That's what I thought. I thought he died in the 40s. So unfortunately, Rondo Hatton could not have gotten his eats at Sheets. And I certainly couldn't have gotten them in Hagerstown at any rate. I'm not sure because Sheets started in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure how long it took Sheets to get down here to Maryland. Probably a little while. But yeah, regardless, poor Rondo would not have been able to make it. Here's a super chat from Black Body Economics. Oh yeah, the inner light. Psh, I knew that. The light within. Derp. Can we call that a subliminal slip? Get it? A subluminal slip. Get it? Yes, I get it. That's very nice. Subluminal inner light. Very good. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. I knew what you meant. Oh, Dana, sorry, hobbits like potatoes. But are they called potatoes or are they called some fucking bullshit Tolkien word? Super chat from John Burns. There are 5 Chick-fil-A's, but they are only in Ontario. Reason? Population density. Canada's population isn't 50 million, and most of it is in southern Ontario and Quebec. No Taco Bell. No Taco Bell in Mexico. Makes sense. Makes sense. Super chat from John Collins. Who would be your 5 politicians you would want to have over to have a civil dinner party? 2 from each party. And who would moderate? From any era, 60s to now. Well, fuck that. How am I going to find... I was about to say, like, oh, Republicans. Well, it'll be Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt. 60s to now? Am I supposed to find 2 Republicans I'd want to sit down with and have dinner with? From the 60s to now. Fuck. Gerald Ford and John McCain for the Republicans. For the Democrats, 60s to now, let's do John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama. Oh, and well, you said 5 though. 2 from each party. So could I have a third one from the Democrats? JFK, Obama, and I'm torn between Lyndon Johnson and Jimmy Carter. I'll go with Johnson. Yeah, I'll go with Johnson. Super chat from Kirek 2011. Steve, I joined an NYPD Blue fandom group, and one of our conversations involved uncut episodes. Now, I knew of Hearts and Souls being longer than aired, but Lost Israel is over 50 minutes longer. Yeah, have I seen the uncut version? I remember when Lost Israel was first on. Lost Israel was a 2-parter. And I think part 2, when originally aired, was 90 minutes. But that was 90 minutes with commercials. Some random geek who would moderate. Oh, fuck, I don't know. Who would moderate? Jimmy Carter could moderate. There you go. Jimmy Carter could moderate. And yes, Dana, correct. I do love peanut butter. But yeah, I know I saw Lost Israel when it was originally on the air, and I don't know if the version like on DVD or that is on streaming is the uncut version or not. It's been a while since I watched Lost Israel. It's a really good episode. But I think I've seen the uncut version. John Burns with another super chat. You're 4 politicians for an uncivil dinner party. I mean, pick any 4 Republicans other than the 2 I picked. Exactly, some random geek. Exactly. LBJ would be a fascinating dinner guest, especially after you get a couple of belts in him. Oh, Kemp, the mayor who smoked crack. Marion Barry, mayor of Washington, D.C. One of my favorite political stories. Mayor of Washington, D.C. in the 80s and 90s, gets caught on video smoking crack, resigns, I think goes to prison maybe for a little while, comes back years later, runs for mayor again, gets reelected. Whole fucking shit. Like, I guess, sure, fuck it. Yes, Rod Ford. Yes, he was the Canadian politician who he smoked crack too, didn't he? Or was it just cocaine? Was it powdered cocaine? Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, Rob Ford and Marion Barry would be good ones too. Did I skip your super chat? I'm sorry, 255 AD. Let me go back and find it. I totally get how you feel, but if I cut ties with this person, it'll hurt me financially, and I have kids, I don't know what I do. No, I understand. It's I guess what I keep coming back to with it is, like I said, they've had years. They've known about this for years. You know, it's not just, oh, he did this once and we found out about it, and now it's like, what do we do? And you have to make a decision, right? They've known about this since 2017, at least. So after all those years and knowing that he's still doing this stuff and they're still maintaining a relationship with him, not taking any steps to kind of transition, even just to transition him out, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know Thomas has got kids and I know that he's financially tied to that podcast, but they've had 6 years to figure something out and they didn't. And now they're stuck with it anyway. Now they've got it. Now they've got to kick him out now. So what are they going to do now? You know? So, um, um, Dana says, do you like potatoes as much as I do? Does anyone? Do you think even hobbits do? I love potatoes. I don't think I like them as much as you do, but I am a big fan of potatoes. But I mean, do I like them as much as you do? No, I don't know if I like any food stuff. I don't, whatever my favorite food is, I don't think I like it as much as you like it, Dana. Kirak 2011 with a super chat. Hey, Steve, just curious, why is there so much hate toward the Deep Space Nine episode Move Along Home? I actually like that episode. Your thoughts? I like that episode too. I think there are some Trekkies that just take it way too fucking seriously. I think that's what it boils down to. I mean, and find it difficult to enjoy an episode, you know, that is not a great episode, but is fun to watch and is enjoyable and is a hoot, especially if you watch it with people, you know. Like I saw a clip. I can't even remember where I saw it because I usually don't watch videos like this. It might have been that somebody on Twitter shared it or something. But you remember, I think last year or 2 years ago, and I was thinking about this today too, because they Paramount Plus does those commercials where characters from its various shows are on Paramount Mountain, you know, and they did one, I guess last year or maybe the year before, and in one of the commercials, they play a song at the end, and everybody's like kind of dancing and swaying to the song. And there's a shot of Spock, Ethan Peck from Strange New Worlds, you know, making the Vulcan hand sign and kind of swaying to the song, right? And I thought it was funny. I didn't, and I think most people who had a reaction to it thought it was funny. But there was this guy, there was a certain segment of the fandom that was like, "Oh, I hate it. It's making fun of Star Trek. It's making a joke out of Star Trek. It's mocking Star Trek. It's you know." And I'm just like, how can you possibly take it this seriously? Like you don't, I mean, you don't have to think it's funny. You can have a sense of humor is very subjective. You can watch it and go, I don't get it, not funny. But to be offended by like the very idea that something irreverent might be done involving Star Trek or towards Star Trek, like it's just insane to me. How can people take it this seriously? So I think part of it is that it's just it's kind of a goofy, wacky episode. And there's a certain segment of the fandom that's like, no, it must never be funny. It must never be cute. It must never be wacky. It's super serious. It's Star Trek and it's super serious. It's like nobody loves this shit more than I do. And there are some deeply serious Star Trek episodes that I love. But come on. Like lighten up. Another super chat from John Burns. Not only that, when accused of cheating on his wife, Rob Ford said, "I've had plenty to eat at home." I remember that. I remember that. Oh, what a fucking... 255 AD, am I bad for not canceling all of my PIS OA patrons? No, I'm not going to say that, and that's not for me to say. Like I have said many, many times, that is between you and your conscience. I would not automatically tell you that you're a bad person for doing that. I will just say this about the situation. I have never been a patron of any of their podcasts. And I'm glad now, because now I don't have to make that decision. Although again, like if it was me, I would not be a patron of them anymore after this. And like I said, I like those guys. I like Eli. I like Thomas. You know what I mean? Like I have nothing personal against any of them. I'm deeply disappointed that this happened. I liked Andrew until I found out this, you know? But I mean, I'm glad that I've never been super close to them, either personally or professionally. I'm glad I was never invited on one of their fucking podcasts. Now I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to think, oh, fuck, I was on their show. and I didn't realize that they were doing these or that they were condoning these kinds of things. Like I'm free. You know what I mean? I'm clear. And it's a very selfish thing to think because I mean, real people were harassed and harmed by this guy, and they're the ones that really need our concern, and our support. But in a very selfish way, I can say, well, I'm glad I wasn't closer to them than I was because fuck, this is a shit show, and they really fucked this up, and I don't have to worry about it from that end. But no, I don't think you're automatically like a bad person. It's like Geek says, up to you. Um, yes, Dana, Paramountain. They don't call it Paramountain. They call it Paramount Mountain, which is, um, Dana, yes, I do think you like potatoes more than hobbits do. Yes. Um, yeah, Shore Leave is a good one. Shore Leave is another. It's again a fun episode. Not necessarily like a great episode, but a very fun episode. Um, yeah, Kara, you're right. There are people who are offended by a Kirk Spock relationship for sure. Isaiah Taylor, click me shoes 3 times and I'm back in Kansas. That's mine. Okay. um, oh boy, Kane, this is a good one. Deathmatch time. Return of the Astronauts. John Glenn versus Buzz Aldrin. Damn. I would have to choose Glenn. As much as I love Buzz Aldrin, I mean, come on, second person to walk on the moon. What's not to love about that? Brilliant scientist, brilliant engineer. He's John Glenn. Of course, I would side with John Glenn. He's John Glenn. He was a Mercury astronaut. He was the first American to orbit the Earth. John fucking Glenn, United States Senator, flew on the space shuttle in his 70s, went back to space. Yeah. It would pain me to have to bid farewell to the legendary Buzz Aldrin, but I would have to go with John Glenn. Super chat from All Mod Cons. I know you met Stuffy at an antique store when you were a kid. I'm dying to know how you met Jack McPherson. Please tell. Well, in real life, I met Jack McPherson because he was actually a gift to me from, I think, my mother on Valentine's Day. For Valentine's Day, my mom one year got me, I think it was like a coffee mug filled with candy, and Jack like came with the coffee mug. Yeah, that's where Jack came from. Because if you notice on Jack's shirt, Jack has a little jean jacket on, and then if you open up the jean jacket, his T-shirt has a heart on it. So he was originally like a Valentine's bear. So that's where Jack came from. That's how I met Jack. Yes, Kane, they both can throw a punch. Absolutely. John Birds, John Glenn would never fight Buzz Aldrin. It's like Kirk fighting Luke. Yes, that's true. But if Kirk did fight Luke, he would beat the shit out of Luke. And again, I love Luke Skywalker. But Captain Kirk would walk him like a fucking dog. And I think we all know that, Force or not. Jedi or not. Oh, he's a Jedi, he has a lightsaber. Captain Kirk would fuck him up. Captain Kirk would leave him laying in a pool of his own fucking blood. And I think we all know that that's what would happen. Because as much as Luke Skywalker might have the lightsaber and the Force and all of that, he will never, ever, ever be able to stand up against 2 very important weapons from Captain Kirk's arsenal, okay? This thing right here and this thing right here. The judo chop and the double axe handle. And by the way, if Kirk really gets pissed off, the drop kick would fuck Luke Skywalker up. No disrespect to Luke Skywalker, who I love as a character, except for when he randomly showed up and ruined The Mandalorian. Other than that, I love Luke Skywalker, my favorite Star Wars character. Captain Kirk would fucking kill him. And then he'd walk over and flirt with Luke's sister. Oh, shit, yes. Shit, yes. Oh, Isaiah, this Yuri Gagarin versus Buzz Aldrin. I gotta go with Gagarin. I gotta go with Gagarin. First human in space. You know, I gotta go with Gagarin. Again, it gives me no pleasure to side against Buzz because I love Buzz. I admire Buzz. He's a fucking hero. But yeah, I gotta go with Gagarin. I didn't say anything bad about Mark Hamill, John. Mark Hamill's a wonderful man. I would take Mark Hamill over William Shatner. Like, as people, fuck, that's easy. Mark Hamill, easy. But Kirk versus Luke as characters, Kirk would fucking murder him. And I'm not even necessarily talking about like who's the best character, just who would win in a fight. And it's Kirk. Kirk is also a better character, but that's not the point. 255 AD says, you know what I keep thinking? There's an ep of Thomas's solo podcast where he talks extensively about how not saying anything to avoid conflict is how you get a good old boy network. Yeah, he's right. He's right. Unfortunately, you know, living it is a lot more difficult than saying it. Doesn't mean it's okay not to live it, but, you know, it is more difficult. Okay, Radical Bacon. Gus Grissom versus Yuri Gagarin. Gus Grissom. Gus Grissom. I love that it's become like astronaut deathmatch night. Yeah, Gus Grissom. Dana says, I don't know. I think it would depend on what version of Luke it was. Veteran Luke just wouldn't actually be there. Kirk would wear him out and collapse and Luke would smirk. That's true. If Luke was like force projecting from another planet, then yeah, okay, then I'd give it. That's a good point. I'd give it to Luke then. He'd just let Kirk punch himself out, you know, and then like, you know, do the Darth Vader force choke and that will be it. Kirok, that's another good one. Yes. I said the drop kick, but that's kind of like a variation on it. That's sort of like a springboard drop kick that Kirk uses in Journey to Babel, the bounce off the wall kick. Yeah, for sure. David C. Drake, fear leads to the dark side and Kirk knows no fear. Exactly, David. Exactly. No, some random geek, maybe not in a real fight, but in pro wrestling, that's how you do it. Yeah, you wouldn't want to interlock your fingers in a real fight and hit somebody because you could break your fingers if you hit them too hard. But in wrestling or show TV fighting, like that, see, and then boom, you bring it down. Ha, Dana, you can't expect Steve to know much about fighting. I don't really know much about legitimate fighting, but I know about show fighting. Oh, that's really cool, Kara, that you got a letter back from Buzz. That's fantastic. Philip Kehoe. Now, this is a tough one, too. Valentina Tereshkova versus Sally Ride. So the first woman in space, period, versus the first American woman in space. And again, as much as I love Sally Ride, and as much of a hero as she was, I think I got to go with Valentina Tereshkova. And yeah, David, I'll give you that. I think Luke in The Last Jedi might be a better character than Kirk. Yeah. Dana says, fine, James Kirk versus Han Solo. See, that I might have to give to Han. Because I feel like Han would fight just as dirty as Kirk. Kirk and Han is an interesting fight because they're so similar as characters. And actually, Kirk would be the straight-laced one in that scenario. Like, Kirk would be the more by-the-book one than Han would be. And I don't know. Han might take him. Sean O'Sullivan, have you heard the song Shatner on the Mount? I have not. John Burns, Spock versus Chewie. Spock. Come on. What's that walking carpet going to do to Spock? I bet. Look, there's got to be something up there that the neck pinch will work on. Spock just has to go. Oh, there's a little bit of fuzz on your collar there, Chewie. Yoink, and there, and down he goes. Um, it does, yeah, Dana. It does say a lot about Han. Yes. Oh, and Carol, you met Michael Collins too. That's awesome. That's fantastic. You got a letter from Buzz and you met Michael Collins. That is so cool. Okay, now we're just getting ridiculous. Elia Clark, Data versus R2. I mean, Data would kick him over like a trash can. Well, so, Geek, I was trying to think of them just having a fist fight. If you bring in weapons, it kind of changes it. But I mean, Han might sneak a weapon in. Han might have a blaster hidden on him somewhere, and Kirk like knocks him down and is moving in for the kill, and Han pulls his hidden blaster and shoots him right in the chest. End of fight. Yeah, 255 AD. I mean, I guess the difference is that Andrew was too close, And again, it's not that I don't understand, but they've known this was coming for 6 years, and they knew he was continuing to harm people for 6 years. And they only cut ties with him after it got out, after it became a public story. So ultimately, I can't have too much sympathy for them. Oh, Paul, that's a good one. Pike versus Kirk. Kirk. I think Pike is too nice. And it's not that Kirk isn't nice, but I feel like Kirk has, a killer instinct in that way that Pike might not have. So I think I would go with Kirk. Kirak 2011, here's a fun one. Who's more logical, Spock or Data? I think Data is more logical because Spock, we see that Spock does have emotions. He just, represses them as Vulcans do. And of course, Spock in Star Trek VI told Valeris, logic is the beginning of wisdom, not the end. So Spock is willing, even later in his life, is willing to acknowledge that he is not perfectly logical and that logic, in fact, by itself is not enough. So I think Data would be, strictly speaking, more logical. Okay, here's one from John Collins. And by the way, I'm going to start wrapping up. The show is coming to a close. So if anybody has any final questions, get them in the chat. I'll answer John's super chat here, and then I'll do my little wrap up, and then we'll come back and get some final thoughts. So John says, favorite scene using the holodeck, favorite Whoopi episode. Favorite scene using the holodeck is and actually this is coming up somewhat soon in Trek Reluctantly, Dana. We're going to watch this episode. It's in season 4. I can't remember exactly how soon it is. I think we're still a little ways off from it, but it's from our man Bashir, and it's when Avery Brooks, when he is in the person of the villain in the holodeck or the holosuite, technically. What's the fucking difference? There's no difference. Scenario when he is just going off on his megalomaniacal rant against Julian Bashir, secret agent. Yeah, that's my favorite. And favorite Whoopi episode. What is I guess Time's Arrow. She has a lot to do in that. Okay, I'm going to do my wrap up and then I'll come back and catch these last couple of super chats. So, everybody, thank you so much for watching the show tonight. Thank you for being with me. Thank you so much for the questions and for the super chats. And to all of you who are patrons and members, thank you for supporting this channel the way you do. If you would like to become a supporter of this channel, and if you can afford it, I sure wish you would, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or becoming a channel member by clicking the join button. And if you do either of those, patrons and channel members at all levels get to submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams. And those are the questions that I spend the first part of the show answering. So if my YouTube work is something that you enjoy and you can afford $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you can afford to help me continue to do this and support this channel, Those are the ways you can do it. Patreon.com/Steve Shives, or click the join button to become a channel member. And of course, you can also do a super chat during a live stream, or send a one-time gift on any of my pre-recorded videos using the thanks button, or send a one-time gift via PayPal or Venmo. Links to all of those are in all my video descriptions. I would encourage you to do that if you would rather do that than commit to a monthly recurring support through membership or being a patron. Also, don't forget the charity links. Charitylinks.page takes you to a document that is maintained by our pal Some Random Geek, where you can find some PayPal links and fundraisers and such to support friends of ours who need a helping hand. And if you have a few extra dollars lying around and you want to put it to good use, I would encourage you to go to the charitylinks.page, or to make use of some of the links that I have seen geeks sharing in the live chat over the last few minutes as well. Also, reminder, if you enjoy my YouTube work, you'll probably enjoy the podcasts that I am a co-host on. They're part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts, and they're linked in the description of this video and all of my videos as well. There's Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I co-host alongside Jason Harding, where we take a fresh look at classic movies and see if they deserve their reputations, whether those reputations are good or bad. Our new episode just went up today, and it is a review of the second movie ever directed by Martin Scorsese, Boxcar Bertha, starring Barbara Hershey and David Carradine. So you can listen to our thoughts about Boxcar Bertha and listen to all of our past episodes where we review a whole bunch of other movies. And also, there is the other podcast that I am a member on, along with Dana, who is with us as always in the chat. Dana and I and Jason are co-stars together on the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast. And if you love my Star Trek YouTube stuff and you enjoy Star Trek stuff that is funny and irreverent, I think will enjoy the Ensign's Log. We just had a new episode go up last week. We are going to record the next episode this coming weekend. Things are just really starting to get interesting in this season of the Ensign's Log. We're heading down the home stretch for this 5th season, so hopefully it'll be fun for you all to listen to, and fun for us to keep making, because it's absolutely a blast. So you can listen to the Ensign's Log and Late Seating. Links to all of those are in the description, and I hope you will check them out. Now, let's take one final look at the live chat before I close it up for the night. There's a couple of super chats that I didn't get to. Kirek 2011 says, okay, I should rephrase Data with the emotion chip, or Spock, who is more logical. I should have said also Kirk versus Cisco. Okay, Kirk versus Cisco, it's going to be Cisco. And Data with the emotion chip versus Spock, I would still say Data, because I think Data, even with the emotion chip, Data has that perfectly logical computerized brain. I think it would still be Data. 25580 says, sorry for going on. I've been agonizing about this a bit today. That's completely fine. I've been thinking about it too, and I know you're a bigger fan of their podcasts than I am. You certainly are a more frequent listener, from what I've gleaned from your questions and such over the years. So I don't blame you for agonizing over it, and it's perfectly fine for you to share that with me and share that with all of us. I think, I it's completely understandable. And John Burns with a super chat. Who shot first? Han. Obviously, Han shot first. Kara, can you find the podcast on Audible? I don't think so. I have to talk to Jason. I don't think we're on Audible. David C. Drake, Kirk versus Aragorn. You're asking me? Do you even need me to answer that? Squire of Gothos versus McCoy. I mean, Kirk beat the Squire of Gothos, so McCoy probably would be. I don't know. I don't know. Could McCoy beat the Squire of Gothos? I think Trelane might beat McCoy, maybe. Hal Jordan shot first. There you go, Cast Iron Chaos. All right, that's it, everybody. I'm wrapping it up. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you all for the super chats and the questions and everything. David C. Drake, it's quite all right. It's triggered. It's a hair trigger, so no worries. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being with me, and I will see you next time. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Bye.